world where achievements and accolades motivate us to do more and be more, we're often left wondering, is this really it?
Deep inside, you know there is more to life. You're ready to leave behind the old, push your way through, and claim the deeper life that's calling you.
That's where we excel.
We're your hosts, Stephanie Allen
and Maren Oslak.
And this is the Soulful Leader Podcast.
Sit back and relax as we share the shortcuts we've uncovered to help you make shift happen. Welcome back to the Soulful Leader Podcast. This is Maren Oslak. I'm here with Stephanie Allen, and we are so excited today. This is our 100th episode. And that is important. Yay! Celebration. Woohoo! There's balloons going off. And, you know, Stephanie and I have been talking about what that means. And I know she's got a story she's going to tell us a little bit later about the 100th monkey and why that's important. And I think one of the big things for me is it feels sacred because it's been 100 weeks that we have committed to the soulful leaders.
You know, and I want to say first and foremost too, it's like, I will be honest and transparent here, is that, you know, I at first committed to all you out there. I was like, okay, I'm going to commit. I want to commit to unveiling the information I have. I don't want to die with the music left in me, that kind of feeling. It's like, I want to be able to make a difference. And it came from that place of giving. And within a year, Maren had asked me, Maren, you know, do I want to keep going? Because, you know, it wasn't like it was getting a whole lot of traction or anything. But what I had noticed is that, ironically, the commitment that I'm making to you and to everyone else out there ended up becoming a commitment to a deeper level within myself, because I started to change. And there was such gifts and such magic that was starting to unveil within me that I realized that this whole commitment to consistency, because it was consistent every week. You know, we had essentially a commitment to show up and to do certain things and to unveil certain things. And that it is a practice. That practice began to start to work on me. Which was like a side effect. I didn't even know that was happening. And now, after 100 episodes, I'm saying how much I have loved doing this. Like, I don't want to stop. I love doing this. It is changing, and I want to keep on giving, and I want to keep on receiving. It's like that inhale and exhale that I say often. You can't do one without the other. You can't give without also receiving, and you can't receive without also giving. They're interchangeable, and I love that. And so, yay, thank you all who have been listening and offering. I mean, many of you know who you are, because a lot of times you've given me really great information for me to bring to Maren and I to talk about and to unpack. So I just want to say thank you so much to all of our listeners and all the inspiration that you have all given us and have helped us.
Yeah, I think that's taking this back to what I said about being sacred to me. I think that's true for me too. And as you were talking, that's what I realized is, you know, we start things for some reason. We have an intention. We're like, we're going to start a podcast because we want to reach people. We want to help leaders become more soulful, come from a place of meaning instead of, you know, just a monetary or I have to do, or, you know, the rat race. And that's all well and good. And it's really important. And I'm glad that we're doing it. And like you said, it's changed who I am.
Mm-hmm.
I have grown so much over the last, what is it, almost 2 years now. And it's interesting because we, for all of our listeners out there, we have people who help us with our podcast. We have editors and we have some social media people. And that's one of the feedback, you know, it's like they've said to us, like, oh, you've changed. Dave, one of our editors, our main editor, has said to me, Maren, you have changed so much. And I appreciate that. hearing it from outside and also recognizing it from inside of me that I'm not the same person that started this almost 2 years ago.
And it's a collaboration. Like, we're all growing and
Mm.
evolving together. And that's really our main intention of why we started to do this, is that we wanted to change the way business does business. And we wanted to do it from the inside out and not so much from the high rational goal setting achiever. Not that there's anything wrong with that. It's just that both Maren and I have experienced that enough in our life, and it's exhausting. And there needs, for our own souls, we wanted to find another way to be able to look within and to grow and make a difference in the world.
And it really is the next iteration of like, because so many of us, as you know, those high successful, like we've been there, done that, climbed the mountain, got the t-shirt, now what?
Yeah.
And we're looking for what, now what? And that is what the soulful leader is. It's the now what. It's the leading from the inside out. And it truly is the inspiration that on two levels that we're bringing to the people who are listening, and also keeping on reminding ourselves and going deeper and deeper and deeper just in our conversations. And that's the piece for me that it truly has changed who
Mhm.
I am. And that's what I think you were also speaking to. And
Well,
the
it
conversation, go ahead.
it brings up, why has it changed us? It's because there's commitment. And that's what we're going to be talking about today,
That's
is the
where I was
importance and the
going.
value of commitment. And
Yeah.
as much as you might think you might be committing to your team or to your partner or to a goal or to whatever it is, you are also committing to yourself, and they're not separate. And you're also, when I mean yourself, I don't mean your ego self or your figuring it out self. I'm talking about the intelligence within you that has a destiny, that is meant to be extraordinary. And we might not even know what that is or what it looks like or what it feels like, but when we make a commitment and you fully lean in, you will be transformed. You can't help but be transformed. And I kind of want to talk about that a little bit because, one of the things that I really want to do for myself and for others is to create transformation. Because
Mm.
if I'm the same as I was last year, I know I haven't been doing my practices. I know I haven't been stretching outside of my comfort zone in a way that surprises and delights me. Now, I'm not saying that this is from a high rational achiever place. I'm not saying, okay, I'm judging or criticizing myself about where I was last year or this year. I'm wanting to hone it and be lifted and to be guided as much as I am to also take action too.
I want to use the analogy of a river because oftentimes we think of, we're going to use the word flow. I'm going to use the word flow, the flow of a river and being in flow. And so we're just supposed to relax into being in flow. And what ends up happening when we do that is we end up being like a cork on the river and we end up floating down the river kind of aimlessly, which means we'll get caught in eddies and or stuck by a branch and going nowhere. And the the successful high achiever type of way of doing that is push through, go for it. Like you gotta, like get the canoe paddle out and go, 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 go. And
Yeah.
so,
And I was going to say, and the other extreme of it is which is the shadow part of it too, is that, oh, if it's not working out, it's not meant to be. I'll just, whatever, I'll just go with the flow. It's not that either. That is
no,
actually the cork floating down the river just without any
drift.
destiny, or it's totally drifting.
Yeah.
So we're not talking about either one of those realms. We're talking about something different, right?
Yeah, it's really kind of threading the needle between those two because the commitment that we're talking about is really holding an intention for where you're going and then also being in flow getting there. So there's the both and of holding the intention to, I'm going to reach this end goal without the at all costs And
Yeah.
at the same time, because I mean, there is such a cost, right, to our humanness, to our humanity, to our health, to our wealth, to our relationships. So if I were to hold the intention and go with the flow of where the river is taking me, the intention will help me to avoid the eddies, to not get caught by the branch. And then I'm not having to have the costs of my relationships, of my health, of my wealth, of my, body, of all of the things that we, we're taught that it's, for some reason, we're taught that it's okay to sacrifice those things
Mm.
for some end goal.
Yeah.
you know?
And the practice of like knowing, even if you do get in an eddy, if you're holding your intention. And so what do we mean by intention is by the way, it's inside. It's not
Mm.
about something that you're supposed to do. It's holding an inner feeling, an inner sense, an inner awareness, an inner trim tab or an inner tethering to one's highest soul. So let me give you an example of saying, when I said, I hope I'm better than I am last year, or I hope I'm different than I was last year than I am now. And what I mean, and I want the same for next year. It's like, I want to grow and evolve in a way that surprises and delights me, and that is of greater service. I want to be able to use my time, my energy, my money in a way that is going to be of service. And I want to be able to take care of myself too. So it's like, but I don't have to figure that out. I don't have to say, okay, this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to, see 20 clients and I'm going to make these many calls. That might be part of it, but that's me still trying to figure it out instead of me literally holding my intention. So as I'm saying this as a healer, people will say, well, how long will it take till, my shoulder feels better? How many sessions am I going to need? Or an insurance company will say that to me too. They'll say, how many sessions is so-and-so going to need until they're better? And I'm like, that's like me getting out my crystal ball and saying, well, let me just magically say that. But the intention is that we are in this to get better, and better than I even imagined. Because when we are just you and I, say Maren and I working on an intention, that's just Maren and I and our egos. But there's a third presence that we invite in. And that is our united higher version of both of ourselves that has a bigger picture for us. And when we invite that third party in, the soul, the essence, then it opens up space for us to have a dialogue. And so that healing isn't a straight line. It's actually zigzag, sometimes 2 steps forwards, 3 steps back, 1 step to the side, 1 step over to the other side, or go around in circles like it's like a dance, right, Maren?
Yes.
It isn't straight line. If it is, it's probably not going to last, or it's not going to feel very good if it is a straight line. That's like head down, butt up, go as fast as you can, as far as you can, at all costs.
Oh,
That's
and
a
we've done
wreck.
that.
Yeah, we've done that. It's a wreck.
So I love one of the things that you mentioned was that there's this third being, and when we think about that, that can be a little bit of a stretch. And anytime two or more people come together, there is a higher, it's like there's an entity that's created, the two of us, right? Or like the soulful leader, there's this entity that is created that is transcends and includes us. So one of the things that Stephanie and I do is we sit down and we actually look at what is the highest intention, what's the highest possibility. And I know that you also do this with your clients. Is there a question that you could share with our audience to help them to kind of dive into that for themselves?
Well, one of the most common questions I'll ask clients when they come in, because often people will fill out an intake and they'll say, my shoulder hurts, or I have a headache, or I injured myself way back when, and I'm weak in this area. And when I say, well, what's your intention? Well, most people say, well, I just want to feel better. I want to be out of pain. And they
Right.
tend to focus on the negative. Like, I want to be out of pain. They're still focusing on the pain.
Mm.
And I'm like, well, if you were out of pain, what would you be? Like, if pain was no longer part of your vocabulary or your experience, what then? And that often makes people do a double take. They're like, well, I don't know. I haven't really thought
Mm,
about like, so what I'm saying is when we talk about commitment is often we're committed to the struggle,
right,
which is going to create more struggle. Instead of saying, well, if struggle wasn't there, what would you be committed to?
right.
And that's a shift. That's a paradigm shift. And so that's one of the questions I'll ask. And maybe in another way that I ask it is I often will say, what do you long for? And you've heard me say this before, whatever you are longing for is actually, there's your third party, is
That's
actually
just
longing for
for
you.
you.
That's your future self that you are actually destined to live into, that has been nudging you or tapping you on the shoulder or speaking to you loudly or coming to you in your dreams or your visions. And you're going, what the heck is that?
Mm.
That that has been happening long before you are able to voice what it is that you say you are longing for. And I'm not saying what it is that you want, although that might be true too, what it is you want. Because when we say this is what I want, we often talk about tangible material things.
Or, like you said, it's going to the negative of I want to be healed,
Right.
right?
Or I want to get out of debt.
Right.
Or, I want less of this. And so just training yourself to, look at what are you committed to? Like you often will know what you're committed to in the words and the language that you're using.
I think also when we look at what shows up in our lives, that's telling us what we're committed to. And
Yeah.
we can look at it from a perspective of beating ourselves up with that, or we can look at it from a perspective of, I want to get curious because if I'm so powerful that I created that, whatever that is in my life, right? Debt or, a car crash or an ingrown toenail or whatever it is. It's showing me what I'm committed to and that there's something there. There's great information. And if I get curious about it, it will lead me. So my commitment would be to be curious about why is that showing up and what would I want in its place? Like you said, of like, what's the
Well, and what
highest
you're saying is
story?
going deeper than just the surface of the ingrown
Yes.
toenail. It's like, because a lot of times people will go to the physical realm. It's like, well, why is this ingrown toenail showing up? And it's like, well, because my shoes are too tight,
Mm,
or whatever. And it's like, okay, go deeper. What is perhaps the pain of the ingrown toenail giving you permission to be more
mm,
committed to? Are you committed to pain and suffering to be able to give you permission to stop and get help or take care of yourself? Like that's what I've been looking at for myself. I'll use my, that for my own example is why we're talking about commitment is because there's been a lot of change in my commitments lately in the outer world. People not keeping their word, whether they're going to show up at a certain time or come for a session and then they don't show up, or, even relationships in my life, the commitments have changed. And it's really easy to go personal and go, oh, I'm not committed. That's why they're not committing to me.
mm,
But again, is that really true? It may not be. Most times it's not, or it could be. I mean, I can look at myself and say, okay, there's been a lot of lack of commitment lately or broken word, people keeping their word to me. Where might I not be committed to myself?
mm,
Or where am I committed to myself that is really not healthy? That's actually making me. So I used to say this a lot when someone didn't show up. First thing I would do is like take it personally. And I'd have to work with myself on that and say, okay,
mm,
wait a minute. Enough of the self-flagellations here. It's enough beating yourself up, Stephanie. What might this be giving way for? It's like, oh, now I have an hour and a half. Maybe it's time to reach out and talk to somebody or make a connection. Or maybe there's somebody else that needs to get in here that's requiring more, more need right now. Or maybe I just need an hour of time to rest and take care of myself or get something done, or it doesn't even have to be anything about doing. Maybe it's like permission for me to commit to myself right now.
I love this because it's again going to the higher story of instead of what did I do wrong, where am I not committed, it's what is being offered to me.
what is the possibility that's being
What's the
offered?
possibility? And
Exactly.
that can be challenging when something in our lives hurts, whether it's an emotional hurt or a physical hurt or financial hurt. It can be really challenging oftentimes to go, okay, well, something's being offered to me. There's a greater calling. And that's we've mentioned practice a lot on this podcast. It's a practice
It
of
is.
keep coming back to that, and it gets easier. I'm a perfect example of that because it's been really hard for me to do that. And I found over that's one of the things that having a commitment to something like that really does help, because it's gotten much easier and easier and easier for me. And now it's actually my first thought, which I hadn't realized until I was just saying that. I'm like, oh, that's pretty cool.
Yeah. I recently talk about a practice. I recently just got an insight of something too. It's like, being committed, because one of the things I have taken personally, like when the commitments aren't there, I'm like, okay, where am I not committed to myself? So I've been working on, what does that mean to be committed to myself? What does that mean to be committed to my practice, to my life, to what matters to me, different things like that. And recently I made a commitment to a person that was really wavering. And there was a part of me that just was like, oh, I just need to be committed to myself and I'm out of here. And I was really guided to stick with it. And it was hard. It became
Mm,
another level of practice. I just had this realization that my willingness to commit to something that was uncomfortable with love. I'm not talking with hate or rage or terror, not to say that they weren't there, but I kept choosing love. I kept choosing love for myself, choosing love for the other person and for what was going on. And now I look at it and I look back and I'm like, that commitment
mm,
changed me more than anything that's ever changed me in my life. And I'm like, wow, I'm getting this gratitude right now. It's just, it's such an aha. And so a question to you all that are listening, sometimes we think we need to be more committed to ourselves, and maybe that's true. And sometimes maybe we need to be more committed to something that isn't quite comfortable.
mm,
And if you can be committed to something that is, whether it's a job or a relationship or a project or something that, is of value, maybe to somebody else, what has it changed in you? What might it be tempering within you? And if you can bring love to it, how might it transform you?
mm.
I mean, I look at mothers and fathers, that get up in the middle of the night and look after their child that's sick or crying. I don't have children in that way, and physical human children. I have fur baby children and I have other children of ideas and things, but I really, you know, in I so admire parents because you're willing to change, you're willing to grow. I think it's one of the highest ways to create transformation
Mm.
is to have children. And for those of you who are like me who don't have maybe human baby children or adult children, it's like we have children in the way of projects and ideas and dreams. Those are also our children. We have our own inner child to be committed to. So it's such a great transformation.
I love that. It does, it kind of gives a different perspective on transformation itself. And it's not something out there that we keep trying to find stuff out there to transform us. And so much of it is about in here. And
Mhm.
at the beginning, I promised that Stephanie was going to tell us a story, and we all love Stephanie's stories. So there's a story of the 100th monkey. And speaking of transformation, I think that it will help to put some perspective on
Yeah, yeah,
transformation.
absolutely. So whether you're a parent or a leader, we're all leaders, leaders of ourselves, leaders of companies, leaders, volunteers, whatever it is. The 100th monkey was told to me a long, long time ago, probably 20, 30 years. It was actually a study done in the 1950s by Dr. Rupert Sheldrake, who studies morphic resonance is what he works with. What the heck does that mean? It's the science of consciousness, really. And he studied biology. So one of the researchers was studying a group of monkeys off a remote island off of Japan. And what they were doing is that they would fly in sweet potatoes and they would drop them on the sand, and then they would watch the eating behaviors of the monkeys and their patterns. And one morning, Emo, a young female monkey, went and took the sweet potato and went down and washed it in the ocean. I mean, that kind of makes sense, right? Like, who wants to eat sand on their food? I mean, we all know what that's like. So she was quite smart. But what was so remarkable is that no one had ever shown Emo this. Like, this was not a common behavior by any monkey. So she did not learn this behavior. She actually discovered it on her own. And of course, lo and behold, it tastes really good. There's not so much sand. So what did she do? She told her family. And then her family started to go down and wash their potatoes and started to eat them. And then they told other people in the tribe, or other monkeys in the tribe. And what happened is that there's we have this in social media. We have algorithms. It's like, those moments of where you're shopping on Wayfair and you go, oh, I like that item. And then you come back over to Facebook and all of a sudden, poop, up comes this very thing that you were looking at on Wayfair. And you're like, God, someone's spying on me. Well, there's algorithms, and if you're Googling, Maren and I did this the other day, I was Googling something and she was Googling the same thing, but our algorithms are very different, because what I'm always often searching for has to do with more with relationships and healing. And what Maren is searching for is often different than that. And so we had very different hits. So how is this related? So this is related in the way of, when you start having a certain number of things happening consistently, it creates what's called morphic resonance. And so what the researchers found, that when there was the 100th monkey, so to speak, so really a percentage of a certain amount of monkeys on this island were all adopting this behavior, it actually jumped to other islands almost simultaneously. So other researchers around the world started immediately reporting back, going, this strange phenomena that all of the monkeys were now washing their potatoes or washing their food and eating them. This is phenomenal information, because as we change internally, as we work on ourselves, then what happens is that you are actually informing your family, and your family is then going out and informing the community. And the community, once there's a certain number of individuals adopting a certain belief or a certain behavior or habit, it creates a morphic resonance. This is what we call memes, by the way. So memes are to your mind what genes are to your body. So what that means is that all of a sudden there's a jump time. There's a leap in consciousness. So if we all believe that life is hard and then you die, and you have to work and you have to struggle, and that's your commitment to that belief, because we're looking at commitment here right now. So what are the commitments that would empower you? What would be the commitments that would be more loving, more kind, not only to yourself, but to humanity? And as you start adopting those behaviors, those practices, those habits, and they start teaching or sharing them with those that you love, and they start adopting them, it goes on and on. We're actually creating memes, and we're actually creating morphic resonance. This is how fast, literally, consciousness can shift. So the power of commitment is huge.
I love that. So one of the things I was thinking about as you were talking is we've got multiple layers and that are happening here. One of them is the reason that I started with that at the beginning was we are at our 100th podcast, and we're starting to see exponential growth and things happening well beyond what we could have created on our own. And that's because you, our listeners, have started to share it, and it's growing. And so that's one level. On a second level, we're living in a very challenging world right now with AI exploding, and there needs to be a level of consciousness that we all bring to the table if AI is not going to take over in a negative way. If we want to hold our integrity as humans and bring our full spectrum. Hue means full spectrum, and we are full spectrum beings. And it is time right now on our planet. We're here for something bigger than us. And the story that Stephanie just told us is so essential, because it's not about me, and it's not about you, and it's not about us as individuals. It's what we're doing, what we're coming together as a larger entity to impact and grow. And it is literally about raising the consciousness on the planet. And so the more we can do that in whatever way you feel, and this takes us back to the beginning of the conversation where Stephanie was talking about longing. What you're longing for is longing for you. And the reason is because it's so needed right now.
Yeah, we are so needing to come together, unity. And unfortunately, our old paradigm, there you can see a lot of people out there are sharing the negative, and that's creating unity in the negative way of like bringing people who all believe in, whatever they're believing in. It doesn't matter. But it's like, what if we could bring together people for a higher story that isn't about right or wrong or good or bad? Like, can we work, you all, can we work on transcending that? So what would that even mean? What would that even look like? And that's my question to you all, is like, to contemplate that. Like, what would it mean if I wasn't making, whether it's political or healthcare or education, we tend to make it right or wrong or good or bad. There's all these, inquiries that are going on about what did we do wrong and what can we do better? And that's still separation. And even though it's still moving towards hope and possibility, what if we could just literally transcend that and go to another level of saying, where can we meet? It's like Rumi always says, right? Beyond right doing and wrong doing, there's a field, I'll meet you there. If we could lay that down of separation, I love doing the conversation, the talk about feminine energy and masculine energy. And so many times people will say, be careful, Stephanie, people are, we're trying to be neutral here and not talk about male or female gender. And I said, oh, I didn't talk about gender. I'm talking about energy, because it's like the inhale and the exhale. That's energy. One is going out, one is coming in. It's not that one is better than the other. We need both. Just like we need both the feminine energy and the masculine energy, we need both. And so what would that look like? And so that's what I'm tasking you all who are listening, is like, what would it look like? And what if we could come together from that place of discovery and possibility and saying, yeah, what would it look like? And then be committed to that, instead of the lower story of that's right, that's wrong, that's good, that's bad, that's incorrect, that's correct. Perfection doesn't exist. We are perfectly imperfect. And that's what we're here. And so committing to that flow and getting out, like coming right back to that, what Maren was saying in the very beginning, what you were saying, Maren, is flowing in that stream. That it does take work. It takes effort to stay in the center, and that it will carry you to the ocean. And there will be others who are with you. Those are our people. Those are the soulful leaders. So I'm so grateful. You all have committed to us and committed to yourself and committed to a new way, a different way that is transcendent.
That's so beautifully put. I'm going to leave it right there and just jump on the bandwagon and say thank you all for being a part of the Soulful Leader with us. And we're looking forward to another 100 episodes. Stephanie and I we're all in. We're 100% committed. So thank you again for listening. As you know, you can find us on Facebook and on LinkedIn. You can also find us now on YouTube at The Soulful Leaders. And we will see you all next week.
And that wraps up another episode of the Soulful Leader podcast with your hosts, Stephanie Allen
and Maren Oslak. Thank you for listening. If you'd like to dive deeper, head over to our website at thesoulfulleaderpodcast.com.
Until next time.